morning and welcome to this grand finale. We are going to close this wonderful forum. It's been a wonderful 3 days, but it ain't quite over yet. And I'm very happy and I'm looking forward to this final session. I won't take any much time here because I'm very excited to welcome the Secretary of Health of Mexico, Mr. Salómon Chertorivski. So please, welcome.
Thank you very much, Lina. Good morning to everyone. It is really a pleasure to be here today with you. Since I see Sven Olver in Querétaro, Mexico, on a Centros de Integración Juvenil conference over there, I almost promised him that I was going to be here because for Mexico, this is a crucial thing. So I made my word. I'm here after Geneva, so it is great to be with all of you. Say hello to my colleagues today, Yvonne Thunell, Mr. Robert L. DuPont, Erika, Karel, Boyanovich, and of course my dear friend, Dr. Julio Sotelo. Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor to be here. I thank really the World Federation Against Drugs for organizing this international forum, and I have to thank also the Kingdom of Sweden for receiving us cordially. We are grateful for the active international role of this foundation. Many countries in the world share the view that much has been achieved in the field of drugs, but that at the same time, much remains to be done. A global problem requires global solutions, and the best way to learn from better practices, to analyze the challenge and find better responses, is to organize events such as the one we are closing today. As stated in the forum's welcoming remarks, it is the only one of its kind where NGOs, self-help groups, treatment centers, scholars, local, regional, and national authorities, politicians, and other decision makers, the business community, and others around the world meet to share ideas, experiences about the work against illicit drugs based on a balanced, restrictive policy. Mexico shares the conviction of the need for a wide public health and safety approach to reduce drug use and its consequences, in which prevention and treatment play an important role in reducing drug demand and creating healthier communities. Our government expresses the need and importance to prevent young people from experimenting with illegal drugs and thus exposing them to the risk of becoming addicted. Drug use affects mainly adolescents and young adults insofar as it has been defined as a pediatric disorder. Results from the WHO World Mental Survey have documented a consistent distribution of early onset of substances use disorder, with few onset occurring prior to the mid-teens and a rapid cumulative increase in adolescence and early adulthood. In Mexico, the average age of onset for drug use disorders is 17 years of age. There is evidence that earlier initiation increases the risk of dependence, which is why one of our main focus is this population group. Neurosciences have greatly advanced our knowledge of the human brain, particularly the adolescent brain, and have provided significant information on the effect of drugs in order to improve prevention and treatment. However, translating this new knowledge into better policy is our main challenge and responsibility. We share with the Minister Larson her conviction about supporting policy and programs oriented toward detection persons and families with substance abuse before the onset of health and social consequence for their children, and to funding interventions direct at children in families with drug problems, aimed at preventing school failure and health problems, including mental and substance abuse disorder. On the basis of this conviction, our First Lady in Mexico, Margarita Zavala, has launched an information and prevention effort that has achieved wide coverage. The result of studies conducted in our country show the significant impact of child adversities of this disorder. It is therefore our obligation to protect our children from these adversities and to help those exposed. We are convinced that treating depression will prevent an adolescent from failing to fulfill the main task at this stage of life. Programs aimed at teaching tolerance and conflict solution during youth will contribute to preventing violence while helping troubled children and youth to stay at home, that will prevent early pregnancy and the replications of the cycles of poverty. This is why our intervention program has a broad scope and incorporates the effort of all sectors of society. Representatives of the grassroots organizations, those of you that share the view of joint responsibility and who work on a voluntary basis, professionally or as policymakers, I really congratulate you on the important outcomes of this meeting. I am sure that all of you now have new ideas to test, new approaches to adapt to your local situation, and renew energy to continue to help make this world a better place for our children and our adolescents. I praise the organizers for having selected such important topics as human rights and rights of the child to be protected from illicit drugs, primary prevention and its role in drug policy, and especially illicit drug use and trafficking problems in Latin America. As all of you are aware, our region faces important challenges through drug use rates have wide range variations within Mexico and Central America, showing low rates of use. Yet, increasing violence have modified our quality of life. We share your views that demand reduction is an important element in the reduction of violence, and we share the commitment to providing our children with a safer world. Mexico has moved from production and transit country to a consumer country with significant efforts to develop a local market. We are committed to the international community to do our best to collaborate and meet our obligations with the conventions and international agreements, and to develop new approaches to face the changing local drug scenes. Regarding this point, we have to be clear about one thing. Mexico has been doing his part. We have taken actions with great responsibility and a firm determination to combat criminals. But we need consumers' countries to do their part. As President of Mexico, Felipe Calderón, stated during his speech at the 2011 United Nations General Assembly, and let me quote him, "Consumer countries are obligated, morally obligated, to reduce the enormous gains that criminals get from this black market. They are obligated to cut the unlimited sources of financing, seeking all possible options so that drug trafficking stop being the origin of violence and death in Latin America, the Caribbean, and also several African countries." It is Despite major efforts to provide treatment to all those in need, there is still an important treatment gap with only 17% of persons with substance dependence, including drug and alcohol, that receive treatment in Mexico. President Calderon administration opened over 335 new treatment centers, which with over 110 youth treatment centers, which are very, very well represented here by Carmen and by Dr. Julio Sotelo, the Centros de Integración Juvenil. We have formed a network aimed at closing the treatment gap. We carry out a census of treatment organization, certify those that meet the norms, and we are supporting those that require assistance. We have also closed those that do not work on the basis of ensuring human rights. We have included ambulatory and short inpatient care for people with dependence in our social health protection program, better known as Seguro Popular or Popular Insurance, ensuring universal treatment coverage to all Mexicans. We have also developed and tested innovative interventions for youth through the web. Our latest national household survey shows that we have significantly advanced regarding the proportion of the population that has been exposed to prevention and have significantly increased the proportion of persons with dependence that have received treatment, mainly in outpatient care. We really recognize the important role of NGOs, particularly self-help groups, in supporting those needs. Much has been achieved, yet much remains to be done. Ladies and gentlemen, I will carefully follow the conclusions and recommendations of this important forum in order to support, as Ministry of Health of my country, President Calderon program aimed at achieving a healthier life for our Mexican population. Thank you very much.
Very inspiring and a lot of wise words that you said. And I also want to thank you on behalf of all the drugs for your support to this conference and for your willingness to come to fly up. I know that it's been a hectic days for you. And I also wish to give you, we bought 1,000 hectares of the Amazon rainforest. Appreciate it. And as you've heard mentioning several times during the Secretary of Health speech, there was mentioning a very important organization in Mexico, the CIG, Centros de Integración Juvenil. And from that organization we are now going to listen to the president of CIG. And I'm very happy to welcome you up here. And I've been to one of your conferences in Mexico and I was so impressed. It was an amazing conference. 3,000-4,000 people, and the knowledge and the energy that was there, it was amazing. So, welcome. And please share.
Thank you, Linda. According to the program, this is going to be the grand finale, and I'm going to make it greater by being shocked. The data that I am going to present you is a wealth of figures about the size of the problem in the Americas. So if I am allowed to do so, I would take just only 5-10 minutes to show these figures and then to speak for another couple of minutes about our centers and the particular combination of social achievement that has made on the last 40 years of its existence, the Centros de Integración Juvenil. Can I have the first slide, please? Well, I would like to point your attention to the problem Particularly in the Americas, the differences in substance abuse, in the figures, in the wealth of the population, the social status of everyone is a very, very huge problem. Towards North America, there is a great consumption of most expensive drugs, and towards South America is quite the other way around. In this substance abuse problem, there is, as I was saying, there is a great diversity in size, substance use, and in the groups affected by this. According to the figures, the common figures about the drug use in the world, about 200 million users in the last 12 years. Of them, half of them use them in the last 30 days, and problematic users is about 20% of these figures. According to this, the problem according to the use of each one of these huge substances, you can see enormous differences in the incidence and the percent of the population, other population who is addicted to these drugs. These figures are rather similar, the ones in North America, perhaps are the highest in the world, and they are similar to the ones in other wealthy nations in comparison with other not so fortunate areas in America. Cocaine use is very much the same. You can see that in North America, the use is about 20 times, or nearly, some of the less fortunate areas in the Americas. Amphetamine is also the same. Consumption in the north side is very high, whereas other addictions, as ecstasy, for instance, is also quite high here in comparison with Central America and South America and the Caribbean region. Opiates is very much the same. These are very expensive drugs, and they are quite frequent, the consumption in North America, in contrast with other parts in the rest of Americas. Now, you can see the size of the problem with the use of marijuana, for instance, at least once by the half of population in Canada, as well as in the United States, and the highest country in South America is Chile. Cocaine is similarly the highest consumption in those two countries. In Paraguay is higher as well, as in Bolivia. Inhalants is the most common form of addiction. This inhalants is a huge problem in poor countries, and is perhaps the more toxic of all of them. We can see, in contrast with that, alcoholism is rather similar in the whole of America, in the whole of the continent, and the figures are rather similar in between areas. So we have differences, sensible differences in addictions throughout the Americas. In Chile, again, almost half of the population is addicted or prone to tobacco use, and those goes down. And in Mexico, we have had a very strong, very intense campaign for the last 15 years on the side of the government, and we are seeing the figures is decreasing the addiction to tobacco in the country. By the students, we can see here some of the main figures, particularly marijuana, which is a very high incidence. Again, in Canada, USA, Chile, Belize, and the Caribbean, these 5 countries are the ones with more consumption of marijuana as well as cocaine. Inhalants, again, 3 countries of them, the poorest ones, I would say, among them, are the ones prone to the use of this substance. Here, data of students and alcohol. We can see in the students in the last month, we can see the consumption of alcohol and tobacco together, and Mexico is rather similar and is higher than in the United States among students. So all this data combined brings peculiar problems on treatment as well as on preventive measures. Now let me talk about the demand for these substances. And this is our story in the Centros de Integración Juvenil in Mexico, which is a very huge and quite experienced organization for the last 40 years, with a presence in all addictions, in all fields of addictions, particularly among the youth in our country. I would like to point you this phenomena, whereas the addictions to marijuana and inhalants and heroin have been stable for the last years. This is a comparison between 1990 and 2004. And you can see this, what happened in the decade of 2000 with the use of cocaine, which didn't happen with the use of other drugs. Now in the last 5 years, cocaine is again going down. We think that this is due to the very intense campaign against the traffic of cocaine between Mexico and the United States, that we can see this decrease in the last few years, 2010, on cocaine, whereas the other addictive substances continue to increase. Not too sharply, but they do increase anyway, at least by 10% in this case. Now, here are the challenges that the Americas are facing in the world field of substance abuse, is that we need to specify record indicators of substance abuse. We have to homogenize criteria for the comparison of data, because every time this data is shown in different countries of Latin America, there is a sort of disagreement about the preciseness of these figures, and it's particularly due to the methods for collecting the data. So in the Americans, we have to homogenize and to make a strong criteria for collecting this data in order to have reliable comparisons. We have to put a greater attention to alcohol and tobacco use, because we think that alcohol use in Mexico as well as in Latin America is far higher than in many other countries in the world, in comparison with other illicit drugs. So tobacco and alcohol is a huge problem for Central and South America, as well as Mexico, which is located in North America, but it behaves very similarly in these figures to the rest of South America. We have to apply this information and research results in the development of public policies. There are a lot of research going on in Mexico as well as in several other countries, particularly the United States, but there is a very weak application of these research results in public policies, and we have to shorten this enormous gap between the information and the application of this information. We have to develop better service strategies based on evidence and differentiated according to existing needs. For instance, in most countries, but in Mexico is the case, we have enormous organizations as Centros de Integración Juvenil working practically in the same field. Parallel institutions, quite expensive in the country, doing exactly the same, but going through different tracks. So we think that in unifying these politics, and I'm very glad to see Maestro Chertorivski, the Minister of Health in Mexico, because he's doing great efforts to put together all these policies in order to confront this huge problem of Mexico. Let me again to say, just to insist, that the problem of Mexico is twice. We have a huge criminality, as you have perhaps known in your news, in the local news, and we have as well now a growing problem of addiction in the country. All this mixture makes an urgent need to make new strategies for confronting the problem everywhere in the Americas. Another problem that we are seeing in the last few years is the gender problem. Women is getting into alcoholism and tobacco very easily, and is the only population in Mexico at least which is having a sharp increase in the addiction to these substances. Now let me speak for 1 minute about the constituency of Centros de Integración Juvenil. It's an institution created 40 years ago by a very distinguished lady who is still in charge of the social organization of Centros de Integración Juvenil. She is highly regarded in the country as a very distinguished, elegant, and very sensitive woman who in the 60s, in the last century, started almost by herself making this Centros de Integración Juvenil. That's why they are called like this. They should be named something more prone to the drug addiction problem, but the name was taken in that time, and it has become a sort of brand name for this campaign against addictions. The Centros de Integración Juvenil has a national operative network of 113 units. During 2000, this provided care to 4,186,000 people all over the country. Here is the distribution of these centers, which are related mostly to the goodwill of the governors and the local authorities or the local industrials or whoever is interested in the problem, and then they have been scattered all over the country. These are the new hospitalization units who are starting to hospitalize patients, particularly for detoxification, and we are trying to survive in this, and we are far away from the optimal situation, but these centers are quite new. And this is Mexico City, you know, is one of the biggest cities in the world. It's 20 million, the metropolitan area of Mexico, and we have all these centers scattered through Mexico City and the metropolitan area. This is the constituency of Centros de Integración Juvenil. Half of the workforce is totally volunteer, out of the society and out of the local attempts in the local communities to cover this enormous problem. We have more or less 6,000 volunteers, and we attend more or less 52% by them of the whole population attended by our center. We have preventive programs, curative care programs as well, and we put too much attention in this day center in which we receive the patients or the subjects addicted to drugs, and we take them under our care for the whole day and give them classes and therapeutic activities, work training, sports, gyms, soccer, basketball, and whatever to make them useful for the therapy of getting rid of their addictions. These day centers are very famous throughout the country. They are well received in most parts of the country, and they are very effective, and millions of consultations and attention given to these day centers. These are our new hospitalization units for brief space of patients, particularly for detoxification. And they are very well equipped, and this is more or less the results of our programs. Our best results are in the daycare centers, and we are getting almost every year we open 3 or 4 new units thanks to the efforts of the government together with the society which is working together with us. Thank you very much for your invitation.
Thank you very much for a nice presentation and for sharing the CIG story and the wonderful work that you're doing. Thank you. Our next speaker will be Yvonne Thunell, and I think that fits right into this one, because Yvonne is working for, and she's the chairperson of Mentor Foundation International and Mentor Foundation USA. And their main focus is working on programs and prevention on youth. So, welcome Yvonne.
Minister, honored guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's absolutely fantastic to be here, and it's such an honor. And I want to congratulate the World Federation Against Drugs for putting this together and bringing so many people here working on this subject. We're all here in this room and at this forum because we believe that we can take action and make a better world for our youth. I'm going to speak a few words about the Mental Foundation and the work that we do and how we work with prevention, and also how we can all put together our efforts and speed things up. And just to start, let's first agree on some numbers. 1/4 of all people living in the world today are between the ages of 10 and 24 years. Collectively, they make up the largest cohort in history. This represents an extraordinary opportunity to shape the world's social, economic, and health future. Supporting youth is not only our responsibility, it's also an opportunity to truly make a difference in the neighborhoods, communities, and in the world that we share. Young people need our guidance, although seeing this team, I think you can guide us, but we also need to reach out and extend our reach. I'd like to begin by talking a little bit about what we mean by prevention and how we carry this out in the world. And I also like to share with you why I think this is important that we have a global response. Now, we live in a world where concerns are being expressed by young people and their behavior. The concerns, as you all know, are around substance abuse, teenage pregnancies, eating behavior, gambling, and other risky behaviors. At the same time, our young people are operating in a world that has many challenges for them. Unemployment, as we know, is at high levels both in the developed and in the developing world. There's an increasing demand on young people in terms of performance. And of course, there's a bombardment of views and thoughts and attitudes and influences coming through media and the internet. And poverty really remains the main challenge, as well as all those areas which are stricken by war. And all of this in a world where there is an economic crisis. So of course, there's a tremendous challenge on our youth. And the reality is that this is not country issues we're talking about, it's really global issues. Not only are these concerns and challenges common to most, if not all societies, but we also know that we live in a global village. So whatever affects in one village will also affect neighbors. Now, in talking about prevention, prevention is very often focusing on the negatives, and it's been looked upon as something, preventing something not to happen. But I really would like to put the contrary into prevention. Prevention is really a positive view where we're not talking about stopping things. It's a focus about helping young people to have control over their own decisions and behaviors. And it's about promoting youth development to create motivation and self-confidence. And this is very fundamental to the work that we do at prevention. When we say drugs, we mean a range of substances, not just the illegal or the hard drugs. We are really talking about the misuse of prescription drugs that we see escalating tremendously and that you've heard over this conference. And we're also talking about the legal highs that are now increasingly available on the internet. The Mentor Foundation, we were founded by Queen Sylvia in 1994 and to address this problem on an international basis. The organization was founded to work on prevention and to promote health and well-being and building protective factors and offer positive alternatives to substance abuse to young people. And our vision is a world where young people are empowered to make healthy decisions and avoid drug abuse. We have national organizations in many countries around the world. In Colombia, Germany, Latvia, Lithuania, here in Sweden, in the UK, and in the United States, as well as a regional office working in collaborating with 22 Arab nation countries. Our administrative offices are in the UK. So far, Mentor has undertaken projects in over 80 countries with 90 projects. And our website is accessed by 140 countries. And we have reached over 6 million young people. Now, we are also delighted to have the support of our scientific advisory network, which includes academics, researchers, practitioners that are represented by the blue dots on the map here. And you can see by the orange dots is where we have projects running. And the green dots represent where we have our local national organizations. The target group that we are working with is, of course, the children, the carers, and we also work actually with the government. So what we do is that we offer programs and resources that includes mentoring, parenting, school-based programs, community development work, sport-related prevention work, and most recently also the development of our Prevention Hub, which is a global focal point of information to support the prevention community. Mentoring is a major focus for our activities here in Sweden, in the Baltic countries, and in the United States. We work in partnership with a number of corporations, and we offer mentoring involving corporate employees as mentor working with children at risk from local schools. In the United States, we're working with school-based mentoring, as in Europe, we're actually working with out-of-school provision for mentoring. Many of the Federation members of Mentor are involved with school-based programs. And in Europe, we have been working with a really interesting program which was developed by the EU and is called Untitled. It's directed towards 12 to 14-year-olds, and we have adapted and piloted and implemented and evaluated this program in Lithuania, in Croatia, Kyrgyzstan, Romania, and Russia, and we have it also implemented in the Arab countries. Mentor Colombia has implemented comprehensive and very successful health education programs for primary school children, and with a focus of life skills. In Mexico, we have had the pleasure to participate and support the program I Want, I Can. And in Germany, we are now developing a very exciting program for 14 to 18-year-olds, and it's a program called Rebound. It has been founded by the EU, and it has involved both our operations in the UK and Sweden and other European countries. And key to our involvement in all these different countries is that we culturally adapt and we support training and implementation and ensure evaluation processes. Community involvement is also another key of our work that we put a lot of focus on, particularly in the developing countries. And we have in Africa now programs that are based on peer-led initiatives that has proved to be very successful. We're also proud to work with the Olympic Committee, and we're working with them in Africa where we combine health and sport in prevention programs. We are happy to work with many prominent organizations, such as the UNODC and other major research focus groups. And we're working with the US National Institute on Drug Abuse. And there are many other organizations that we work with here in Europe. We closely link with government agencies, and for example, for Mentor Arabia, the work with the government there has led to that we're setting up a focal point for information, research and support in the Arab region. I also want to mention, you see on these t-shirts, H&M. We've been working a lot with them in several countries on prevention programs. And that's really an example of a true win-win where a corporation truly engages in reaching out to youth with a drug prevention message. We are circulating something that we call the Prevention Update. It provides news of research and development to practitioners, educators, policymakers and parents. And I invite you all to join this newsletter, which you can do by connecting into our website and signing up for the newsletter. And the Prevention Hub there is something that we're putting a lot of development, which I also hope you will find as a good resource in the future. And let me summarize that prevention of substance abuse is truly an international challenge, and we need to operate with the perspective of prevention as something that promotes health, youth development and empowerment, and where we adapt to different approaches to different people in different settings. To achieve our objectives, we need to work in partnership and collaboration with all stakeholders, and I would say also especially with the corporate sector. They provide so much motivation to the young people. And I'd like to refer back to Her Majesty Queen Sylvia's opening speech at this forum. And I believe all here in this room will agree with me that the issues that Her Majesty identified is something that we all work very hard on. And that is, we must all take actions to protect our children from falling into drug abuse and to stay drug-free. I'm so pleased to be here today, and again I want to thank the World Federation Against Drugs. I am looking forward to working with all of you. I think we all needed to work together in making prevention truly happen. And collectively, we can truly make a difference. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Yvonne, again. And now I would like to welcome up on stage Erika Boyanovich from the Center of Information and Education for Drug Abuse Prevention, or CEDRO, through an organization that I'm looking forward and I'm hoping to one day come to Peru and visit you.
We know that the drug problem is complex and global, as it undermines the security of governments, it destroys our environment and our biodiversity, creates problems in our economic and damages the health of our societies. To do this, the Peruvian government and the international cooperation are vetting and sustainable programs and projects for the fight against drugs, looking for economic improvements that promote change in attitude against the illicit cultivation and trafficking of drugs, with social and environmental development production areas with a special emphasis on education and training of young adults. As we have seen, Peru presents a serious environmental problem. Therefore, young people have been working on the promotion and development of economic initiatives and community development to respect and promote environmental stewardship. Our culture and the advantages of a legal lifestyle and sustainable life. It has generated economic entrepreneurship that promote lawful life among young people, for example, raising small animals like ducks, pig, chicken, and guinea pigs, cocoa greenhouse, and ornamental plants, crafting, and others, with technical assistance in business management. Education is an important issue for the Peruvian government, which is why young people have been working to educate our peers, young and adolescent ones, in values and a culture of legality, strengthening them as leaders in their communities, and promoting a clear awareness of the negative effects on society of production, marketing, and consumption of drugs. For development of young people and their communities is also needed access to new information and communication technologies, and give young people greater opportunities and updated information to promote the comprehensive development in their areas. Unfortunately, the adult vision about young people has traditionally underestimated its potential, considering them basic and or victims of social problems. Taking for granted the necessary relationship between young and guns, violence, and drugs. Either it has been understood youth participation has in terms of reception of services designed specifically to meet the inherent problems, scholarship, competition, information fears for young people without their participation in decision making. We seek to be heard by local developments. We want to participate and make decisions on issues that concern us. We want to coordinate with all stakeholders, preventing actions not only on the issue of drug production and trafficking, but also in preventing drug consumption in our communities. We are increasingly young people who in an active way participate in working groups on issues of poverty reduction and prevention of drug use. And there is more motivation from authorities to facilitate on participation in rural areas than in urban areas where paradoxically there are more resources. There are many things to do in Peru to harness the potential of young. In education is important more their rights and duties. Purchase commitments to their community and have a sense of national identity. There are promising developments on this issue, and we look forward to contribute with this. Access to employment is a youth issue especially sensitive because through this it creates better conditions for development of household economics and communities. It is therefore an elementary condition to have alternatives for technical training, entrepreneurship, condition management to promote self-employment options and employability, to prevent our young people entertain the illicit life and crime. From a development perspective, is also relevant to young Peruvians working in a strategic form for the proper use of leisure time. In the sense, sport, art, and culture contribute to achievement this goal. In Peruvian, main young athletes are excelling in various practices. Specialists are being trained in the rich culinary tradition of Peru. We have young artists in classical and popular music, among many other areas for development, mainly from private and individual effort. But there is a lot of policies and resources from the state to support this initiative. We are realistic in saying that young Peruvians, given to the condition of development, can and must become the decisive force in the development of the country, where 1 from every 4 Peruvians is between 15 and 29 years. Properly exploit in the enhance this demographic bonus is a strategic task that transcends government and should be a continental commitment. Our contribution to the harmonious and sustainable development of our communities depends on the investment that our governments and international cooperation make on key issues of our growth: education, citizenships, values, life skills, social and productive, entrepreneurship, employability, and prevention from insertion in the productive chain of drug, comprehensive health, promotion and prevention of risk behavior, especially the abuse of illegal substances. We reaffirm our commitments to continue working so that more young people become actors in the development process in our country, giving the young the opportunity to be the change. Thank you.
Thank you, Erika. And I am impressed over all these organizations that are here and present at this forum. We have heard so much about all the wonderful work that CEDRO is doing. We heard Mentor before. We have heard so many during the days. So thank you for sharing that. invite the executive director for UNODC, and unfortunately he was unable to come, but he really wanted to be here, of course. Who didn't want to be here? So, but he sent us a greeting, and I hope we can. He wanted to address the forum, so now I hope we can get a couple of minutes of...
International President Council, members of the board, distinguished
Beautiful.
participants. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to address the third forum against drugs. Please accept my regret that I cannot be present with you today in person. Ladies and gentlemen, I commend the work of the World Federation Against Drugs in supporting the international drug control framework and promoting the health of people. I welcome the firm support you have given to a society free of drug abuse. A world where the consumption of drugs is not accepted as a decent way of life. I reaffirm UNODC's own determination to work within the framework of the drug conventions, the rule of law, and human rights to counter the World Drug Program. In doing so, we will continue to take effective measures to prevent the use of drugs as well as provide treatment to people suffering from drug dependence with a view of their rehabilitation and reintegration into society. Most importantly, we share an overriding concern for the need to support children and young people. Illicit drugs do not offer opportunities to young people, they deny them. That has been recognized by many members of the United Nations as well as those countries ratifying the Convention of the Rights of the Child. The Drug Conventions calls on governments to use all means possible to protect children from harmful drugs and from being used in the drug trade. In our own work, UNODC has started two initiatives related to young people. First, UNODC has launched a new program in Afghanistan that reaches out to children exposed to drugs at a very young age. The program is developing interventions from this very vulnerable target group that has so far been neglected. It will also expand to South Asia and West Africa very soon, and we're redoubling our efforts to make it a truly global initiative. Second, we have launched a youth initiative to work with young people. It enables young people to respond to drugs instead of being passive recipients. A group of young people recently addressed the delegates of the 55th session of the Commission on Narcotic Drugs and discussed their own commitment to raising awareness about illicit drugs. I hope that you will also want to join this global movement. Please contact us through our website www.unodc.org. Youth. The factors that put people at risk of using drugs are many, but the resources are few. However, we know there is a scientific evidence that drug prevention works. We know that there are policies and interventions that can help prevent people from starting to use drugs and ruining their lives. Drug prevention is also cost effective. For every dollar spent, we save at least $10 in terms of future health and the costs of crime. Prevention programs are designed to make sure that children and young people have the opportunity to lead healthy and safe lives. Children and young and vulnerable people everywhere need our assistance. We cannot afford to fail them. I hope, ladies and gentlemen, that we can continue to work together to give people the choice to reject illicit drugs. I thank you.
Thank you. That was Mr. Erika, the Executive Director of UNODC. Thank you for sending us that. And now, our final speaker for the full forum, I guess. It's a bit sad, but still it's not any speaker. It's Mr. Dr. DuPont, Robert L. DuPont, And I hope that you will sum it up a bit and maybe give us your main conclusion from these 3 days.
Thank you very much, Linda. I'm thrilled to be at this conference and to have this opportunity. I had 10 minutes, but I can tell you I've got 3 words to summarize the 3 days. You just have to wait a second until I get to the 3 words, but it's coming. This is truly a global celebration of us being united together with a shared vision. That vision flows from the wisdom of the prophet of the future of drug policy for the world, and that's Niels Bohr. That prophet based his vision on the specific experience of this country, and that experience needs to be articulated over and over again, because the policies developed in Sweden were not developed out of any kind of ideology, but out of the reality of the experience. And that was Sweden had an initial experience with the modern drug epidemic in 1965 and tried the approach that we now call harm reduction by medicalizing the distribution of drugs to drug abusers to wean them from drugs. And the discovery was that by doing that, it perpetuated their drug use, and they spread the drug use in the community with those drugs given to them by doctors. It was on the basis of that experience that he developed his whole theory about addiction and what needs to be done. And his vision is clear and simple, and that is the society needs to unite around the idea of rejecting drug use, period, and organize the entire community around that vision. And this is very important that we clearly understand that experience, why we're in Sweden, and why we have the values that we do, which I want to go over with you in a moment. But that vision clearly expresses the folly of trying to pursue the illusion that you're going to make peace with drug use by accepting it and tolerating it and even encouraging it, which is the alternative vision that still animates much of the world in terms of dealing with this problem. I'm also very grateful and want to acknowledge the patronage of Queen Sylvia, whose personal commitment to this effort is so important to everything that we've been doing. And having her here to open the Congress was extremely important to everything we're doing. Now, our job is to carry this message to each of our countries and to use it to empower us to go forward and educate others and bring them into this vision. So here are my 3 words. The first word, and the most important, is drug-free. That one word carries the identity of what we're doing, and it absolutely separates us from the alternative visions that are seductive diversion from our message and what we're trying to achieve. And we don't say the word we're preventing drug abuse. We say we're preventing drug use. That's a huge difference. It sounds so small, but you can hear it in anybody who's presenting to you. Because abuse is in the eye of the beholder. It's a subjective concept. Use is an objective reality. And that is very important to be able to make that distinction. The second thing is the bright line of legality, of what's legal and what's illegal. And in this field, so few people think about that, talk about it. But it is vital to understand things are not illegal for no reason. They're illegal because the community, the society, the nation has made a decision about this behavior and made it illegal to make it a message to every citizen And that bright line is extremely important, and I want to talk some more about that. But the point I want to make is emphasize, do not walk away from that. That bright line is essential to what we're trying to do. Now the second word, first word is drug-free, the second word is recovery. You notice that's not the same thing as treatment. And the reason for that is recovery contains within it two elements that are different from treatment. Treatment is consistent with it, it helps recovery, but it's not the same thing. Treatment is relatively short-term. It's measured in weeks and months. Recovery is for life. And once you apply the metric of recovery to what you're doing, your calculations change completely, because you're looking at the lifetime of that person and not at a few weeks or a few months. And that changes everything. We heard that in the presentation from UK about how they're rethinking what they're doing by using this word, and the word contains within it this concept of for the life. The second thing in that word that is so important is it's not just about not using. It's about a different life, a better life, an honest life, an unselfish life, of caring about other people, a fulfillment of the potential of that person. That's better than not using. And it's really very important for us to do that. Now, in that context, I particularly focus with you on the 12-step programs of Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous, and for family members, Al-Anon, but also other efforts of people who are in recovery to reach out and help bring others in and to prevent people from going down that path. And I'm particularly impressed by our Youth Chris group that we have here, and I ask you to just stand up for a second, a local group that is with this message. Thank you very much. Because those are people who've been on the other side and have come back to testify to others about what that is and about how important it is not to go down that road. And that is in this word recovery. Now the third word that I want to summarize our 3 days is the youth. Youth. And what has happened at this conference was we have begun a process of reclaiming the concept of human rights for drug prevention. The words and the idea have been hijacked to protect drug users from laws, lawful laws. And the idea that a person who has broken the law needs human rights protection for the breaking of the law is an outrageous concept. And what has happened by focusing on the Commission on the Rights of the Child in Article 33, which is, I think, the signature event of these 3 days, is reclaiming human rights around the idea of protecting children from drug use. That is a radical concept. The idea that governments and communities and parents and educators and doctors have a responsibility to protect youth from drug use and trafficking and the effects of drugs from others around them. That's an affirmative responsibility grounded in concern for human rights. That's a radical idea and gives us tremendous focus and energy for all the things that we are doing here. And I also want to emphasize something to you. Usually when people talk about prevention, they're talking about words. They're talking about exhortation. They're talking about education. But it has to be, that's important, but that's not enough. It has to be that there's an affirmative responsibility to identify the drug use of youth and to intervene to stop it. That is part of the responsibility. That's radical. That's completely different from the way most people think about it. But it is extremely important that that be included in what we're talking about when we're talking about prevention. We're talking about something that is extremely important for the interests of the youth. And it needs to be done with that in mind. But that vision is extremely important to what we're doing. Now, I want to end with a phrase that I have found very helpful in a number of contexts, but I think it fits very much with this meeting and these 3 days. We each feel the limits of our personal abilities to contribute and to achieve the goals that we share. But at this meeting, we realize we are not alone. We have a growing community that shares a vision and it truly is global. That is a gift. That is very important. And here's the phrase that I find helpful in this. You alone can do it, but you cannot do it alone. And that is the way it is with what the mission that we are on, to deal with a huge modern problem of the exposure of whole populations to powerful drugs by powerful routes of administration. This is creating an entirely new problem in the history of the human species. And the fact that it's complicated, as we've heard people use that word complicated, the fact that it's difficult, could hardly expect anything else. We're talking about creating something new in the world to deal with a problem that's new in the world. And it is difficult and contentious, but it is extremely important to our survival and to the quality of life in our communities, our youth, our productivity, our quality of life. I'm so pleased with the colleagues we have from Mexico and from Latin America, where the drug problem is literally pulling apart whole societies. And the idea that you could solve that problem by legalizing drugs is just an amazing misunderstanding of what's going on and what the risks are. So, united, we can do anything. And I want to end with a phrase that I take from the Swedish Youth Smart. Yes, we can!
Thank you, Bob. That was very, very exciting. We are now coming to an end, and the World Federation Against Drugs would like to thank all the speakers that have been here. You've done a great job. We've learned a lot from you. We also want to thank all the moderators who've done a great job at helping us out to make this be as good as it is. And we also want to thank you, all of you participants who's been here sharing with us. I think that we go from here a bit wiser, with a bit more knowledge, but I also think maybe the most important that we have a larger and stronger network now when we are able to meet and so on. And after this, the WFAD will have its Congress, which I think is also a very exciting thing to see that this organization is now growing. We are today over 70 member organizations. And I hope that we will continue to grow, and I'm sure of that we will use this knowledge and information here to continue to do that. So with that, I want to thank you all, and I hope to see you all, and I want to see you all in 2 years, because now we start to plan for the 4th World Forum Against Drugs. So thank you.